Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today we are talking about the first three Jurassic Park movies: Jurassic Park, The Lost World, Jurassic Park 2, and Jurassic Park 3. Now, of all the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World movies, I had only ever seen the first one before, so the rest of these are pretty new. And I, as a fan of the Weekly Planet podcast and Mr. Sunday Movies on YouTube, I've been exposed to the theory of his co-host, Nick Mason, that all the Jurassic Park movies are roughly equal in quality. That's a claim that he's made before he ever watched all of them. And James, the main host, or I guess the other co-host, always refutes him on that. He's like, no, nobody thinks that. You're wrong, blah, 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 blah. And so now I'm watching them for the first time with this kind of joke of a mindset in mind. But I don't think it's that far off. I thought these three were pretty close to equal quality for me. Obviously, the first one has more wonder in it because it's the first one, but the sequels can't be the first one. So I don't think it's fair to count that against them. But let's get into my notes. I don't have that many notes. For the first movie, my only note was how does the mosquito in Amber fit into the timeline? Because when watching the movie, the opening scene is a dinosaur attack in Jurassic Park. And then after that, we see them finding the mosquito in Amber, which then later in the movie we are explained that's how they got the DNA to recreate these dinosaurs. So to me, that seems like it's in the wrong order. Because they already have dinosaurs created and born and killing people before we see them find the Ember. So was that scene just out of order for some reason? Or was that specific to a particular type of dinosaur and they had already gotten mosquitoes and ambers for other dinosaurs and that was just for an additional one that they didn't have yet? Or I don't know. It was very confusing to me, the order that those scenes were in, because I knew that was part of it. Like I said, I've seen this once. I watched it once before, a couple of years ago, on VHS. So yeah, that didn't quite make sense to me. My only note in the second one was Vince Vaughn, because I had no idea that he was part of these movies. It's one of those things that I've probably heard, but just forgotten. And then when I got to my notes for the third one, similarly, I wrote William H. Macy and the clown from Air Bud. But I was, I guess, not presented, but my brain came up with what I think is an interesting question during the third movie. Because as they're starting out on their adventure in the jungle, what's her name? Is it Amanda? Mrs. Kirby? She's doing all these things that are very likely to cause other people to die, right? Screaming into the bullhorn, screaming at the top of her lungs, not listening to Alan Grant. So the question came to me, and I'm going to pose it to you. If you are in a situation where, let's say, you are the expert, you are the Alan Grant of this situation, you know exactly what to do, what not to do, and what other people need to do, and you have someone like Mrs. Kirby in your group who is not listening to what she's told, not following your advice, and actively doing things that will put the entire group in harm's way. How do you deal with that? What is the right thing to do there? Because obviously you could do nothing, which will then very possibly lead to the death of your entire party. The extreme version is to kill her, to raise the chances of survival for everybody else. Seems a bit extreme, though. I feel like there's a slightly less extreme version where you perhaps trick her or deceive her into getting separated from the group so that you're not actively killing her, but you are removing her from your group to increase your group's chances of survival. And also, she now has no help of any kind. Not that she was using it all that well, but now her chances of dying are greater, but you're not causing them directly. I feel like at the least, what I would do in that situation is give a very stern, very serious talking to about, look, what you're doing right now is going to get everyone killed. So if you don't stop, I will step up and take you out of the equation to save the lives of everyone else here. Whether you follow through on that threat or not, I think making that threat could be justified. I was surprised there weren't, this is a fairly old movie. I was surprised there weren't any characters slapping her across the face and saying, "Get a hold of yourself, woman." So yeah, how would you deal with a situation like that? Not necessarily specifically this Jurassic Park situation, but a similar situation where lives are very much at stake and she is very much a problem. How would you handle that? I'm curious. I don't know what I would do. Moving on, my next note just says that the raptors in the first movie were not like this. So, were there only 2 velociraptors that we saw in the first movie? I think they said there were more, but then they said the alpha killed all but 2. So then there were 3. So I guess there were 2 that were following them in the cafeteria kitchen place, and then there was the one that she had locked in the communications whatever building. So we only ever saw 2 at a time. But I feel like the big thing for the third movie was, they're way smarter than we thought. They had all these different types of calls that they used, and so we see in the movie these different types of sounds that they're making for different situations, and they're trying to figure out what they are saying and what they're doing. But the 2 that we saw in the first one didn't do that. So it's one of those things. It's a retcon, obviously, but I'm trying to decide if in universe if it still works, because maybe they didn't have that much to communicate in that scene in the first one because they were just hunting in that room. But yeah, it just seems a little odd that they're so different. But it's a different environment. There's more of them, and there's more factors at play than there were in that kitchen. So I'm not too hung up on it. It's just a little. If in the first one, and not to say that everybody should be like George Lucas and go back and add things to the older movies, but if they had gone back and just changed some of the sounds in that scene in the first movie so that we hear that there are different types of sounds that they make, and I guess maybe they did and I just didn't realize it at the time, but then once it was focused on, I was like, they didn't do that. But if those scenes are shown with multiple different types of sounds, then you at least have that idea in there before it's explored further in the third movie. I think, for my money, the third one was the least enjoyable. And I don't know if this is why, but the only big factor I could find that was significantly different was the lack of children in the third one. So the first one, obviously, we've got Hammond's grandchildren. The second one, we've got Ian Malcolm's daughter. And in the third one, we do have, what's his name, Eric? We do have the one kid, but A, he's not even really part of it until like halfway through the movie. And B, he has already survived there for 8 weeks. He is informed because he's read the books of Alan Grant and Ian, what's his name? Malcolm. So like, even though he's physically a child, he's not used the same way that the children in the first 2 were, which is where they don't know what they're doing, they're misinformed, they're scared, they're making bad decisions. But unlike Mrs. Kirby, you're not gonna sacrifice the children to, right? The point is to, save the children, right? And I liked what I liked about 2 and 3 is that not that they split the cast up, but that we got to see more of the cast I guess, kind of individually. So, The Lost World, we see more of an insight into Ian Malcolm's character. And, you know, we put him in this different role of it's now his girlfriend and his daughter. So he's, you know, the main guy there. But they didn't change his character. You know, it's not like, oh, he's such a sweet, perfect dad. It's like, no, he loves his daughter, but he's an imperfect dad, and that causes issues in their relationship, and it causes issues on the island, right? And so, to me, that was very interesting. And then Alan Grant is still kind of just the same. But his big difference is his relationship with the dinosaurs has changed now, where it's less about awe than it was in the first one, and now it's more out of fear. But there's still a lot of interest and curiosity there, but the fear, I think, is more prominent here than it was in the first one. But in terms of his relationships to the characters, you know, he's got Billy there, which, I don't know, I guess makes him more of a father figure in this one than he was in the first one. But in the first one, he was pretty much a father figure to, I don't even remember their names, Hammond's grandchildren. So he didn't get as much of a different light shown on him as Ian Malcolm did. So I think between that and, like I said, the lack of children, it just, to me, the third one just didn't give me as much. I don't think it was bad. You know, I feel like the general consensus that I've heard is that the first movie is good and all the rest are crap. And while I don't think 2 and 3 were as good as 1, I certainly wouldn't think they were crap. And I kind of feel like, similar to some of the Despicable Me movies that I talked about, I feel like if somebody wanted to watch any of the 3 of the first 3, I wouldn't have a problem with it. You know, if they were like, oh, let's watch Jurassic Park 2 for whatever reason. You know, I wouldn't be like, oh no, that one's horrible. We gotta watch the first one. Like, any of the 3 of those seemed like they'd be fine. I watched all of them without getting on my phone, without being distracted. Like, I was engaged. Granted, I was watching at 1.5 speed, which I do with a lot of stuff. Which also makes some of the CGI not so great, but that, you know, I don't hold that against the movie because you're not supposed to watch it at 1.5 speed. So that was my choice, so I'm cool with that. But, yeah, I think these 3 are all pretty fine. I don't think any of them were, none of them blew my mind, you know. Jurassic Park, like so many other movies, you know, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and so many other movies, I just don't get why they're such a hit. It escapes me, right? And not to say that they're bad, but like, there are a lot of fine movies, there are a lot of good movies that don't catch on the way these ones did. And I sometimes I wonder, I try to take myself out of, you know, the cultural context of now where they are popular, and I'm like, how did they get that popular? How did they get that huge and that mainstream? Is it just because dinosaurs are cool and people like dinosaurs and there aren't that many dinosaur franchises? I don't know. So, nothing against these movies, but these don't seem like something that I would pop in for a good time. You know, I'm pretty partial to superhero movies, and there are plenty of people that don't understand why people like those. So, you know, I don't hold it against anyone. That's just my perspective of it. But I feel like I'm rambling now, so I'm going to call this a video and get into the Jurassic World movies next. So those are my thoughts on the first 3 Jurassic Park movies. Feel free to let me know any comments that you have, but that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.